Welcome to Passionaire Magazine, the podcast where we talk about business, tech, food and travel, fashion, health and fitness, the arts and culture, where we want you to live your passion. Passionaire Magazine, the podcast. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for part 3 of our 5-part series, 5 Ways Empathy Affects Your Leadership. Now, if you would like to read the article, you definitely can do so. It is available through Authority Magazine. We are looking at part 3, like I said, of this 5-part series. And part 3 is fostering inclusivity. Now, let's jump right in. The first way that we can do this is by acknowledging and valuing diversity. Now, I know that diversity is a word that for some reason has caused many folks to cringe. But let's understand what I mean by that. Diversity means that you have a little bit of everyone that could be included. What does that mean? So if you are, and this is in the workplace, remember, so if you are dealing with a product or a service, unless it is exclusively for one particular group of people, meaning it's a product that's for women or a product that's for men. But if it's a product that is for people, then diversity would mean you have a man and a woman. Okay? Diversity would mean that you would have someone who has straight hair or curly hair, long hair or short hair, if it's a hair product. That's what I mean by diversity. Make sure that all of the potential people or groups of people that could, would, or should use your product or service are consulted or represented. Alrighty, so let's get started. Acknowledging and valuing diversity. Empathetic leaders recognize and appreciate the diversity of their team members. By understanding and acknowledging the unique backgrounds, perspective, and experiences of all individuals, empathetic leaders create an inclusive environment where everyone feels valued. Now, again, for some folks, looking at diversity scares them, because it means that they are no longer able to sit comfortably where they are. What does that mean? If you are looking at a product or a service, if you are creating something, you're creating it through the lens of your perspective, through your experiences. By acknowledging and valuing diversity, you are bringing others to the table who may not have used the same lens that you have used or had the same experiences that you have. I'll give an example. I grew up on the East Coast, but guess what? There are other places that you can live in the world. Perhaps you grew up in the South. Or are you a Midwesterner? Or perhaps you've grown up on the West Coast. All of those things are different. Or maybe you're even a Northerner. Depending on where you live, not only does it have an effect on your outlook of life, it also determines a little bit of your accent, the way in which you speak, the way you sound when you speak. Now, moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, when I first arrived, everyone knew, definitely not from California. Though I may not have sounded like a Texan or for someone who is perhaps from Georgia, I didn't sound like the people born and raised in California. So I brought a sense of diversity. I brought an East Coast perspective of products and services. So when we're looking at ways that we can create an environment where people have a understanding of that their background, that their perspective is important. When we take the time to appreciate the fact that people may be different, it actually adds a well-rounded perspective for any product or service that we could offer. To acknowledge this fosters a sense of belonging, ensuring that the team members from various backgrounds, from various generations, feel recognized and appreciated for their contributions. Again, diversity isn't just about race or ethnicity. Diversity can also be about regional locations. It can be so much more than the little box in which it is many times presented. Number 2 is creating a safe and inclusive space. Again, we are fostering inclusivity. Empathy is an instrument in which we create a safe place or an inclusive space for all team members. Leaders who practice empathy actively listen to the concerns and the experiences of the individual team members, especially those that are from underrepresented groups. By doing so, they contribute to the workplace culture where everyone feels heard and represented. This safe space encourages open communication, idea sharing, as well as collaboration amongst team members. So just because you are underrepresented, it doesn't mean that your voice isn't important. Let's take that regional example that I mentioned earlier. Now, if I had been on the team and they said, well, we only want to hear from people that are from the West Coast, my voice would never be heard. If you were having a meeting and they said, well, we only want to speak with Midwesterners, even though the company may be on the West Coast and I, being originally from the East Coast, we wouldn't be heard. But when you decide that you want to be inclusive and say, let's hear from the various regions of the country, then you may get a unique perspective. When you find out that, hey, this particular thing does this particular thing when you're in a southern climate, or when you're in a northern climate, or perhaps when you are in an environment such as Hawaii. This is what makes this uniquely special here on the island. It doesn't matter what you're doing. When we are inclusive, it gives us more points of value. It gives us more things to look at to refine our product or service in a way that more people can be included. Another way that we can foster inclusivity is by promoting collaborative problem solving. In an inclusive environment, empathy facilitates collaborative problem solving. Empathetic leaders understand that diverse perspectives bring a richness of ideas and approaches. By actively seeking input from all your team members and valuing their unique viewpoints, leaders can foster a culture of innovation and creativity. This collaborative problem-solving approach not only benefits the team's performance, but it can also reinforce the idea that every team member's contribution is essential. It is so important that in our workplaces that we are creating a culture where, again, people are feeling heard, valued, and a sense of belonging. We do that by being inclusive, not exclusive. When we create an environment where we're fostering inclusivity, we create a place where everyone on your team feels heard, feels needed, and has a sense of belonging. I hope that part 3 of our 5-part series, Fostering Inclusivity, has helped you to gain a new understanding, and perhaps you too can adopt one of these ways into your new sense of being a powerful, effective, and empathetic leader. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to Passionaire Magazine, the podcast.